got a whole bunch of points here at the 11:40 turn start, but he was off on his own. So we did some rallies, and you can see, you know, you're never, unlike a lot of the games, you don't improve, you don't get your morale all back easily. I wish you kind of got it. I'll have to look to see, but I think the way it's worded, you do not. I wish you got it back when you got the fatigue turns, like there'd be another rally phase for everyone or something. But it just is, no, that's a skip turn as far as I remember. Let's see. So not only is some of the Continental line a little shaken, but also here we're seeing situations that are kind of ugly, where this guy, for example, is going to have to spend a movement point to turn, changing facing that gets him whatever the opportunity fire is called in this, a chance of that. So that's kind of problematic. And I can't fall back into the woods or anything like that by backing up. I have to actually turn around to get there, and that would be several shots at me as I did it. So I'm kind of stuck where I am. We see up here, I think this is, yeah, Maxwell's heading around the side here. That's going to be kind of a dangerous place to be, because the reinforcements will come in. Maybe, I don't know, if it weren't for the artillery that's with me, I've sent too much artillery this way. I was like, oh, geez, there's not enough unit here to hold all that artillery. Well, I sent a lot more artillery the other way, and it's not looking promising. But we'll see what the effect of the movement and fire is after this. It is beginning to get into a confused type of situation, and I don't know. I don't know honestly how realistic and believable that is, but this system tends to create more ragged interpenetration of troops than the TSS-based systems do. Now, when I say TSS-based, I mean the CWB. I mean everything pretty much that has come out in tactical firepower games other than this line. How entirely true that is. There are some games that I recall, and Labatt is one of them, maybe the Battles of the Age of Reason, the musket and pike stuff, that are somewhere in between this and the TSS, in the sense that, like, you have to worry about facing and movement and stuff, and paying movement points to face and all kind of crap like that. That's kind of fidgety, fiddly, whatever you want to call it, and kind of annoying, but you know, it does present more realism there. The thing that's just really weird with this, these charts, the way they're developed, and there's some definite bonuses to that, and then the simultaneous fire design, which isn't very simultaneous. And speaking of which, as we walk into that here, we've got kind of a mess, because yeah, everything starts getting disjointed. If they're nice solid lines, like most of the game systems tend to present, that aren't based on pushing pieces around more. And that pushing around is fine. That actually applies very nicely for this era. But and you'll see something similar to it in the GMT design, where that's not happening. You tend to have these nice solid lines that you can go up and down. But here I've got this mess. So I can, let's see, this unit would be the starting point, I guess, for the for this side, for the Continentals, and I don't know. This doesn't have any firepower, so let's go with this one for the Brits. But then on the other side, it's these two. And again, I don't have to actually fire the starting unit. I can skip it and go to something else. But we got a lot of intermingling and a lot of a mess, and I have to kind of contemplate, first of all, who's going first. It is the Continentals who get the choice again, as always, for some reason. I don't know. Seem to only roll odd numbers. So the question is, okay, this doesn't really matter much. This doesn't matter much. So it's looking to me like this is the side that by default is going to matter, if either side is going to matter. So I'm going to just start over here rather than try to calculate where my midpoints are going to end up and everything. Whether the Brits start here too? Probably not, because they've got more troops on this flank, so they'll start over on the other side. Period with certain simpler games, and for some reason this one, when they started putting these damn bold things in it, I stopped being able to read anything. Now I'm trying to find, and it doesn't seem to be organized in that way, but I can find no information that you're fired upon when you retreat, which is a staple of the TSS. Would make sense that it's not here because you're running outside the range. So I think that's what I'm going to have to do here. So zones kind of don't matter, which means I can retreat this way with this unit, is my take. I can run right through that zone of control without any problem. That's not what I thought about these games, but that's okay. We'll deal with it as we can. That was artillery fire there. Pretty close to the end of the line there. Colonials got something of a success here. They took out a gun. That happens to be worth 2 victory points, I guess. And look over here. And again, I have to look this crap up every single time I shoot something, basically. Because like British infantry are worth 2 points each. Colonial infantry are only worth 1. It all makes sense, but it's not as easily presented. I find these rules more annoying than the usual SPI rules by far, and it really has to do with that bolding choice. And it doesn't help that this is a system I've always had trouble grokking, essentially. Anyway, an example, and I don't know what the fuck's going on. I think this is here. The Brits have a lot of rally power, so I was able to pull off a lot of the rallies and a lot of the disorders, and all of them would go, except now I remember that maybe there was a rule where you couldn't rally units that are in an enemy zone of control or adjacent to an enemy unit or something like that. So I can look up the rally rule, and here's where we see this wonder of all of how this rule book is set. So this doesn't have any reference to that, but it does have a reference to the player must trace a line of command. Yeah. The army leader may rally. Okay, where is it? Here it is. The leader may rally a friendly unit with which he's stacked. This is the procedure used in the introductory scenario. Still applies. No case number here. Once they started putting these fucking bolds in, they started being really, really sloppy over at SPI about giving the references that they used to give. Sometimes they were wrong in the other games, but you know, you'd cross it out and whatever, it would show up in the errata. This is really obnoxious. So now I have to go back to something I haven't been able to find very often, which is trying to figure out where the fuck the introductory scenarios rally rules are. And there doesn't seem to be any rally rules here. So I don't know where I found it. I found it before, and it might be somewhere. I mean, since I found it, it must be somewhere, but I don't fucking remember where it was. And that starts to piss me off. And that's a combination of 2 things. One, a lack of the discipline that SPI had originally. And maybe the TSR people were like, oh, well, we actually like this bold version, and people hate little numbers, so let's use less references. Maybe they had an influence on that. I think this was probably ready to roll before TSR took over, but it did take a while to get to me, so I don't know for sure. The other possibility, and TSR tended to like these, so I don't know. The other possibility is just that they started getting very sloppy towards the end. Once they started heading towards this. But I can't fucking find the rule that I'm looking for. I've failed to find it before. I've probably succeeded at certain times. But it's not easy to find. And it pisses the hell out of me. It's in a reasonable place under the morale rules. And I've marked it in my rule book now. It's actually referenced. So it's referenced here. Jeez, I found it and now I can't find it. Somewhere or another. Here it is. All units in the hedgerow are always in command. That's the rally. These are the rules that are in play for this. Well, they're not really here. It's rule 9.5. Not the scenario where it tells me to look. And 9.5 says routed units can only rally if they're with a friendly leader. The unit must not be in an enemy minimum range fire zone. When it rallies, turn the route marker over to its disordered. Oh, didn't know that. would be really useful if they put the whole rally rules in the rally section instead of sticking it somewhere else and just assuming you'd have it. Well, I don't fucking remember what's what anymore. So I'm gonna stick these guys with disordered. I'm gonna leave the rest of the results as they are, and we'll try to play correctly from now on. But so far, units have been rallying fully from rout to nothing. And that's a big deal, because the Continental units are going to take more morale hits in general. They're worse at firepower. If you look over here, and the biggest thing is those morale checks, they're much more likely to fail. If they don't have a leader near them, they're not very good. The British regulars are pretty much equivalent to the best Continental units with a leader, with a good leader stacked near them. Another grump. Leaders have a 1 hex range that they apply their leadership bonus to. And again, this is just a finicky little fiddly aspect, but you have to be aware of where your leader is exactly. And it's not very clear, because it could be under a stack with a route marker, or a disorder marker, or something like that. So it's not always obvious who's applying that bonus. Again, just some of the decisions that were made. They may add something to the realism, they may add something to the storyline and everything, but they add a little bit more to the amount of mental and mechanical efforts you have to pay with this game. There's a general gripe against vertex facing. It works fine if the hexes are significantly bigger than the counters, but hex side facing just tends to work more naturally. When you start using hex vertex facing, and I understand the reasons for it, it's a good thing in general, but it's very easy to bump things and get them in trouble. Hey, another issue against things like Labatt, where you counters. Now, Labatt's worse, as with any game where you have both. That's just like boggles my mind. Why do you need both? Well, you need both because in column you're more flexible, so you face a hex. In terms of movement, you face a hex facing in some of these games, not this one. This one handles it in a nicer way, and then you're able to, you know, shift around and move more rapidly. But you face hex vertices when you're in line, and it just ends up, you can't tell even formation, because sometimes formation is determined by what your facing positioning is, and it's just it's such a crazy idea that the counters are going to stay that flat and that perfect. It's pretty hard just with vertices, though. Vertex games, I tend to have a lot of bumping and not being sure. And, your accuracy goes out the window when you start having little physical errors like that having an effect on play. You know, right? I mean, if the system is accurate and the physical representation is so problematic that it causes extreme shifts in what the representation actually is anymore, well, you've thrown your accuracy away. We come to one of the other situations, and this happened with some of the later, with all of the later TSS games, as far as I know. They started differentiating the gun crew from the actual artillery. I prefer the CWB solution and the original TSS, which kind of played them together and just said, screw it, you know. But again, I understand the need, the desire for accuracy. These guys shot and routed the crew. So we put a marker here, we get this guy, and this guy has a marker. Now this says this cannon can't fire until that crew has been rallied. And we got one more shot left. Let's take care of this. 6 in line versus line infantry, which is a 2. That's going to be a morale check. Oh, those guys routed, so I got to make morale checks for these guys. Hold on. 3, he had already disordered, so now he has another morale check afterwards. I'll do this guy afterwards. But this guy's a 1 now. Oh, look, he routes. Gets out of there. 1, 2, 3. And this guy, I don't know what his morale is. We'll look him up. We also don't know if there's a leader kicking around near him, but we don't think so. So he's a 1, I rolled a 2, he also routes and he'll be out of there. Finish things off by charging into the unoccupied guns. That puts me in a good position, you know, for some defensive fire against these occupied guns. Maybe knock them out of the way as well. We get our victory points there, but 2 more points for the Colonials. They were at 8, they'll be up at 10 at this point because they have the terrain advantage. And yeah, now, and again, you know, all the fiddliness, etc., that I complain about, I can understand some people don't mind at all. Some people who play Labatt, who play Battles of the Age of Reason, who love these games, and I totally get it. I'm a little too clumsy for them. And they're adding another barrier to me. So you can ask, well, why is Musket and Pike okay? Well, Musket and Pike's okay because it adds details to other things too that are really, really adding to my imagery for the game. So there's a lot more steps in there, which makes it a little bit better for me because, and it also has the beautiful command system in place rather than just, you know, hey, you're in range, can you command it? I mean, Labatt is the biggest joke of all, where, for me, you know, where the command system is so almost non-existent. It has an effect, but it's almost non-existent. And then it's got this really burdensome and picayune little movement system. I think Battles of the Age of Reason has the same problem going for it. The rules are better than Labatt's, although I managed to completely misunderstand something, so they must not be that good. Or that clear to me, at least. But yeah, you know, it's like the overhead for actually maneuvering units and playing with them. Well, if the game doesn't have a lot of maneuver in it, and that may be another part of it. Musket and Pike doesn't have a whole lot of maneuver. You know, you're marching these unwieldy pike formations forward. They're not doing much, and those are the formations that I like. And actually, when we start getting into the games, the later games in the series that have smaller units, they don't have the double-sized units, they have more terrain, so the maneuvering's more and more painful. I start feeling the same way that I do about these, and I'm just like, these aren't as much fun, you know. And honestly, I've had fun with this game. I'm ragging on it heavily, but playing this is making me regret having tried to and succeeded in picking up my copy of Wellington's Victory, because although it was, I got multiple copies and there was all kind of problems with it, but it ended up reasonably cheap. It's just, shit, man, did I really need that? Well, the answer was yes, because what else was I was going to do do Waterloo with? I didn't have anything else that covered Waterloo in any detail. And looking at Labatt, I sure the hell am not going to do with that. Well, I got lucky. I found Viva l'Empereur, which is much more to my taste. It doesn't focus as much in on the, you know, are the shoes in this unit properly addressed, whatever. I mean, I just really hate having to deal with lots of picayune movement rules. And I understand that they do add something. There's no question there. They just don't add much to the story that I'm getting, and I don't know that they're all that necessary a level of detail. Because when it comes down to it, detail doesn't tend to add historical accuracy. What it's giving you is a better view of what's going on. And the visualizations and stops and breaks that I take, that I enjoy seeing these lines in position and everything, well, they seem to represent just perfectly well in that lighter TSS, CWB movement and maneuver system. And I'll tell you, the firepower in those systems, not the TSS so much, but the firepower in some of those systems, the details in a lot of places are good enough for me. You know, like they are better than what I see in, say, Labatt. You know, the command rolls, they're better than what I see in Labatt. And those are things that I am just, you know, more interested in seeing how they operate. Sorry for all this babbling. It's not what I usually like to do with a playthrough, but I'm kind of on this personal voyage of exploration, you know, of, okay, I've always disliked Ney versus Wellington. I found myself disliking, and I find myself and discover that I'm disliking games that have similarities to it, and it's just interesting to at least for me to reflect on the whys. Sure, I could do it in a cleaner fashion for you, and I will in other games, but right now it's the moment of discovery. So, you know, this is either the horror of my videos where, you know, I'm just going into something, hammering on it again and again because I'm just learning it there, you know, or it's whatever is good in them, you know, is that you're really catching my thoughts as they're coalescing. And the Continental's just in such a mess here of disorder. I've tried to rally some of them, got some stuff in the line, starting to form something. Over here, a stronger line here, which is something of a threat. We'll see how that bears out, but they're in the woods, they're not really pressing very hard. Open order guys. And then an attempt to come around here, but you know, that's just not going to succeed. I'm used to this line somehow holding off better. Maybe not used to seeing the British march quite so aggressively, and boy did they show them Yankees what for, didn't they? The thing is, with all these big stacks of Brits, I'm always thinking, I better wait until they come. These things are great. So I'm just throwing them forward and trying to break up that line and moving up here. And this is actually far and away the best I've seen the Brits start the game off with. And we hit noon. And yeah, British have mainly broken the colonial line. They've kind of captured all of the artillery that came down this way, and that gives them a point boost. Actually, at this point, they're at 16 points to 12 for the Americans. And this crossroad looks like it's in trouble. It's looking pretty bad. And historically, yeah, I mean, the Americans broke after their first advance. And that's something I've never seen happen before, so it's kind of cool. Again, I've never seen the Brits just say, you know, screw it, man, let's just charge them. We're better. We're regulars. What's this crap coming at us? So that's kind of cute. What amounts to really almost a full-scale bout. Back here, it really is, but these units here having to fall back, and it really is beginning to look like the historical situation in a way that I've never seen before. Over here, yeah, I'm trying to extend this and put some pressure there. Make sure that the Brits keep some forces there to keep this pinned down. That's Scott's brigade there, yay. Maxwell decided to turn around, throw some more strength over here into this side of the advance guard, and I'm sending these artillery off. They're going to be out of command, but that's okay. They can still move half their movement allowance, and eventually they'll catch up with these and string along, and we'll see if the reinforcements help at all. And we can see the British regulars pursuing the Continentals. They haven't rolled the fires yet, but we're just about ready to start that. And getting some enfilade fire, but for the most part, these disordered units, I can just march up to them. They're not gonna, their fire's barely gonna touch me. As long as I'm only getting shot at by one unit, it's really just not that big a deal. These British units are really tough, and I didn't realize how potent they were. Horrible rules organization. I forgot how bad this is. I was looking for leader loss. You know where it is? It's in the hedgerow scenario special case rules. I mean, seriously, some of the command rules are in here. Well, the leader loss, well, actually they aren't. The leader loss rules appear to be in here. This is the only place I can find them. If you suffer losses in fire or shock, you roll a die on a 1, the leader is going to be reduced. We just had such a situation with Lafayette. And that's why I had to check it. I took a casualty and I didn't know. So yeah, we didn't get a loss, but we're working our way through. The Brits have been trumped over here, basically. But now driving this unit away without getting fire here, now they can skip over. It's one of the weird things with the reciprocal fire phases or whatever, is it's hard to kind of, actually no I can't, I've got to go down here because I do want to shoot that guy. You can't always guarantee that you know how the patterning is going to go, and it's just It doesn't bother me that you can't guarantee, but it's just hard to keep track of. And as we go, and we did check for fatigue this turn, as we go into the 12-20 turn, Continental still holding 3 of the locations, able to crank some points. They actually caused a casualty already. British regulars got hit. But otherwise, yeah, we're seeing, the line collapsing still. But it is very, very interesting to see how sort of effective the British are on the offensive, even without all their counters, etc. I begin to have a different view of this. So the other times I've played, I've always looked at the and I told you this, the quantity of the English, and I said, it's really hard to keep them from getting surrounded and flooded, this, that, and the other. But man, they just cut through this crap like butter, so it's pretty, they have a fair amount of resilience even when they're unflawed. There's no particular morale penalty for being unflawed. At least not that I noticed. Yeah, there are no modifiers to the morale check other than the size of the unit, I think. I'll give it a double check, but man, that really makes these sturdy units very, very resilient to fire. I was a little wrong about my assessment on the fatigue rolls. We just had a fatigue roll here for the 12-20 turn, and so I look it up. And routed and disordered units automatically rally without any leaders, but routes only rally 1 step to disordered. And controlling terrain, victory points are still assessed. So, I don't think there's a limit. I think the next turn could be a fatigue turn too. I thought there was a... No, there are no checks for the next 2 turns. Okay. Yeah, I thought there was something like that. I vaguely remembered it, but whatever. Okay, so this is actually really a bonus for the Continentals because they've got some serious problems right now in terms of route. This would have been partially resolved anyway, but these guys, well, I guess they're stuck there in route state. They aren't running. I'm not sure. Anyway, I'll take care of the rallies, and then we'll push on to turn 8, which is where a big mass of British troops starts coming in. See, temporarily reforming the line. I mean, yeah, it's going to get busted up again probably, but this puts the Continentals in a much, much better situation. We'll see whether or not they can get any oomph on the Brits. Chances are they can't. We do what we can. I'm starting to use out-of-command markers. I don't have any activated, unactivated markers. That's kind of a problem. You kind of have to remember which units are activated, which units aren't. The route counter here to mark when the fatigue was. You could use anything, but I feel like I have a fair amount of force here holding this line. What I want to do is an outflank type situation. It's a pain in the butt because there's no road to use, but we're beginning to push our way forward. Now, if you use the road, you get to bring on all the units. You don't get to bring them on all if you don't use the road. We've got another big pile of troops under Clinton coming in. Clinton's important here because none of these forces are activated yet. I guess they could have been off the board and they would be able to use the full road movement in that case. But until next turn, I'm not going to have, well, even next turn, I'm not going to have Clinton on the board, so nobody's activated. So it seems almost reasonable to send forces this way. The problem that I have, there's a lot of independents over here under Cornwallis. What I'd like to do is shift some of the independents, but in order to get this to work, I need to get control of one of these crossroads here. And right now, it looks like sending these guys forward, I might be able to launch some attacks from the back, or else threaten this position so much that the Continentals try to pull out. It's hard to disengage in this game, though. Anyway, time to start firing guns. And this time, I hope I remember, last turn that I fought with the British, I wasn't quite so gung-ho in terms of giving them some bayonet. Now I kind of have to, because they're very formed, and yeah. That's the real way to bust them up. is to just charge in there and hit them hard. And see, we turned the Continentals running again, just pushing in hard. Took a casualty though, and that's a couple of victory points, and that's why I'm not launching an attack into here. In the woods, there's a penalty to the shock die roll. And even though I'll be like, well, I'll be at 150%, but I'll be here on the +6 column, that means I'm likely to lose a unit to try to get this hex, strength point. That's not worth it. That's a significant amount of victory points, etc. And trying to rush this situation that way. These guys are mainly just pinning these guys down while my main force chases the main Continental force down. So, put this here, and the Continentals do not have 2 crossroads anymore, so they only get 1 victory point at this point. You'll notice the British victory points are at 20, or at 10 here. I can push this forward. I've got no 0 space, so that's about that. And we'll go back to the American side here. Interesting turn on the colonial side. First of all, I turned Maxwell back around. Hey, if they're going to march up this way, I had better set something up, preferably along this woods line, and try to defend in both directions. Sending Lee up too, just because I've got Wayne here. Lafayette can partially be commanded by Wayne. It's these guys who need Lee's amazing leadership. But a couple of interesting routes happening over here. Erskine's got some work cut out for him, basically, and his other units aren't all that terribly happy either. We may actually see a position where the Brits may not be able to afford to do what they're doing. Now, I think they can, because I've got another reinforcement pile coming on, but it means I can't just count on this holding the line. I'm going to have to get something else here to help defend this, and that makes Cornwallis's job a little harder. Clinton's actually a better leader than Cornwallis, higher rank, but so I don't know what it means, because the forces that Clinton has are more organized into brigades, so he kind of doesn't need as much leadership. If I'm sending another unit over this way or something, I'm not quite sure what to do, but we'll see. I'll figure it out. You know, sometimes you're just forced into a circumstance by what happens, you know. Wallace broke down one of his light infantry. I guess those were regiments. I'm never quite sure the scale of things unless I'm sure. Somewhere or another they tell you, they always do, but this is okay. Let's see, the map itself doesn't really tell you. It tells you how high the elevations changes are, which is 5 feet each, but I don't see. And the map scale is kind of interesting to me, because I'm assuming it's actually fairly large, given the effectiveness of the fire. Musket fire, okay, it's about the same range as the Civil War games, the 2 hexes thing, but I think it's been skewed just a teeny bit, mainly because I don't think you're within 100 yards of each other when you're next to each other. I think that's the melee combat. The melee combat isn't real, it's shock combat. It's not really melee for the most part. It's probably just very close fire, where the muskets are actually effective, as opposed to what we're normally firing at, where maybe somebody drops and some people get a little shaken and maybe they turn and, you know, run, but there's not a lot of casualties going on in this. And it's kind of interesting because the technological changes in the musket are basically non-existent. I mean, between here and the Napoleonic era. But the soft tactical side of how units operated, here we're still talking Frederick's style linear organization, although modified by the terrain. The rougher terrain in the Americas has caused them to disperse a little bit more and to be a little bit less unwieldy than they are. But you really didn't have the kind of mass pitch actions that you did during the Napoleonic era. There's more, there's basically a similar flavor to that linear tactics of Frederick's era, because it's really just a modification, which, if anything, actually reduces the casualties even more by dispersing the troops a little bit more. We're not getting into the, clouds of skirmishers coming out and trying to protect the units so that the massed units can hit with a little bit more power and such. Anyway, enough babbling on that. We're going over to the British side of the turn here. The Continentals. Oh, we forgot to give the Brits their point. They get a point for holding two of the crossroads. But yeah, the Continentals are... Oh no, this was the British side of the turn, wasn't it? I just moved the Brits. That's what's happening. We go to the firing side of the turn. So we don't give them this victory point yet. Well, I don't think we gave it to them at the end of the American turn. Okay. But yeah, now the Brits are coming forward, and they're going to give a little bit more of a hit. Continuing to advance here, I hope. I don't know what these cannons are up to. These cannons are in range of Clinton, so he can keep them in command so that they can move just a little bit further, because these guys were activated being with Clinton so that they were able to move their full road movement rate. And we're hoping that they'll be able to reinforce what Erskine's got there, but he's not going to be able to activate them. And the problem is Cornwallis is over here leading this attack. So I don't know if this is going to work or not. It's really coming kind of to a, hey, let's keep positioning the chess pieces to threaten the board position a little bit more and see what comes out of it. And we make it to 120. I can get rid of this marker. No longer in the restricted fatigue zone or whatever. And you can see, the Brits threw the Colonials back again. They're routing and everything. Got two of these hexes. We got forces coming this way. When you start looking at it, and this is, it starts to look impossible to me when you look at the quality of the British units and what they can kind of do. Yeah, I got a lot more Colonials coming in, but the only real way of scoring some hits is to get a lot of enfilade fire for the Colonials. So basically what I have to do is I have to have enough numbers that I can spread out and, threaten the position, especially using the terrain and everything to kind of give myself a chance at doing that. Places like here, there's an interesting choke point. Those British regulars aren't really good at going through the woods. They get disorganized when they try marching through them in line. So forming a defensive line here, like this one, it has some better staying power than it looks. Now you can see Dickerson's militia has headed away at this point. But it's the road that I need to control, and Scott's sitting on the road. If I can push this back to here, I don't know what kind of kettle of worms that opens up, because Washington and such not, I think, are coming in along this road for the most part. There may be some option to come in up there, which seems pretty questionable unless you want to outflank a British position up here. And I'm not going to be able to divert any of this limited force to go help a fight here. The hope was that this could break through. Maybe it can, maybe it can't. It's pretty hefty. But, if this situation deteriorates, I do have another brigade coming, but if it deteriorates too much, I really don't know that I can hold as far forward as I am at this crossroads. I may have to pull back just to be able to have Clinton, who can command the entire, the extra brigade, basically. and then have to hope, I'm sorry, not Clinton, Cornwallis, and then have to hope that Clinton can somehow put extra pressure on. I don't know. We'll see. On the colonial half of the turn, and I played through all the combat and everything, we see him starting to deploy some artillery over here, making control on this road. This is still, I mean, there's some attempt to recover there. Over here, we got a little stand of woods where Wayne's troops are kind of at. Lafayette, a little to the flank, trying to protect from any kind of outflank. If the Brits try to pull down that way, their line may be so sparse that I can get unflotting fire, at least with Wayne's troops. Lafayette's not going to be active because Lee's over here. However, there's one real flaw here. I'm behind the woods in most places, which means the Brits have to come up and get disordered, except if I break down into light infantry, which the only unit that can do it over here is here, the other unit that can do it is over there. So I'm not going to be able to easily fight in the woods there under good conditions. What I can do is I can put pressure here on this unit, try to get it out of the way. Then I get control of this road, and now I'm causing a whole world of problems to the Continentals. But again, what do? Do I just march up this way? I mean, I don't know what that means. The Continentals may well just, head for the main town and try to wipe out whatever Erskine's got. It could just pivot the battle in too much of an ugly way. I've only got commanders to handle so many areas, and I really don't know what the effect is. Right now I'm sending Leslie up to reinforce Cornwallis, but beyond that, there's not a whole hell of a lot I can do, and I can really only fight in 3 places with the Brits, unless I'm detaching a brigade all on its own to go do something in a way, the Continentals are doing. But the problem is, I've got Wayne here. He can actually do something. He can make it into a pitched battle if he wants to. And I'm also on the defensive there for the most part, which means I don't really have to do anything. The Brits, I don't know if there's anywhere where they just want to put a holding pattern. Maybe a couple brigades here or something. If I can throw Cornwallis back a little bit, I could take aggressive action and try to pin things here. I just really don't know. We'll see how this turns out, because if I chase those back and catch these guys and just destroy them, then I've got 2 columns, 1 for each side of the woods. Pull into 140, the Continentals get shoved out of those woods. Maybe if I had been in better order, but basically just even contact with, disordered some units to attack. Maybe if I had just been in contact, the problem is I was only in contact with a limited number of troops, but routing them routed the disordered units that were behind them in the forest or in the woods as well. Likewise over here, I was able to do a push with some bayonet or close melee type action, and that's about it. It's able to reform his line exactly in the same place. A lot of rally capability. 3 points of rally plus whatever they're stacked with over here. So yeah, it's all disordered and everything, but it's got its ability to stand there for a little while, I guess, maybe. I don't know. And then over here, some of the artillery plunked and got some of them Brits out of the way there. Combating against units in the woods was very, very ineffective this turn. Everything, pretty much trying to hit on 6s, hoping for a morale check or whatever. It kind of disgusted the British, so they launched, Cornwallis launched some melees across here, some of them better than others. He lost a couple of units, though, that's the problem. And although, nope, he didn't rout anybody. Wait, he routed this. This guy gets to make a morale check that I didn't make, for what it's worth, and that might change things. Nope, And you know, for whatever that's worth, yeah, I blew a hole in the woods area, and now the Brits are kind of partially through here. So maybe we cleared it, but maybe not. um, I don't know for sure. Because the problem is, conceivably firepower could drive these disordered units back, and maybe they could come back into play, or whatever. Troops still slowly coming up over here, long range fire. I ran out of disordered markers, so I'm using the reverse of cannons. One of the problems with the magazine games, especially the ones that had a lot of markers for it, it's hard to predict which of the markers you actually need. So, you know, when they're limited to, like, this, I think had a 250 something counter mix, which seems pretty big, you know, for a magazine game, right? But it still ended up, you know, not being sufficient, because the SPI was always biting off a little bit more each time with the magazine games, and this one just does not have enough counters to represent all the informational stuff you might need. It's okay. It's a pretty good deal for what it was like $250 for the magazine for each issue, under subscription. Pretty awesome. Continental resistance is resilience is a little astounding at times. Here, we sent the one unit that broke through back with some enfilade fire. Great, you know, that happens, but we're causing some casualties. We sent these guys running. Point-wise, it's 36 to 30 right now, and we kind of stymied these with just one brigade here, basically. So I don't know. Those units, Gray's command is the real problem. It is not the quality that we saw in the rear guard. And that's one of the things, is Clinton's whole stack is kind of not the same quality units as what's available here. We only have one, you know, you see the 4 morales and such on it. We only have one of these brigades here, and it's a pretty good one. But yeah, they're taking casualties, and you know, the army becomes much weaker as the casualties start to mount. So I didn't take a fire there that I have the opportunity for. It's pretty unlikely, but whatever. Okay, on to the Brit turn. Overall, the Brits feel a little stymied here. I don't want to make that mad rush, especially with the disordered units, but there's no other real status they can be in while they're crashing through the woods like that. But between that, here I could have launched an attack there. I'm not disordered here, but because those are my lights. But still, the woods penalty is just too great to chance. It's you know, it's a -2 to the die roll, which means I'm looking at better than a 50-50 chance of something bad happening, no matter what, you know. Disorder's not too bad, but in general, depending on the odds in the table that you're on, in general, it looks like there's a good chance you're going to lose a strength point, you know, like here. You get a 1 over here. That's not a good result. It's 2 victory points. Over here we had the Dragoons hit and the clear. That's, you know, a little safer. They're out of command now, unfortunately. I didn't count on, I didn't think about what was going to happen, so Cornwallis is kind of a stupid place. But they traded casualties, and again, that's a victory point for the Continentals. Right now the Continentals are ahead in victory points, and as long as the board's split and that's not moving, that's more or less where things are going to stay. My hope is I've got some artillery coming up. I got more artillery here that's going to unlimber pretty soon. Artillery is pretty effective in the woods because the balls crash through the trees, splintering this, that, and the other. I mean, artillery is effective everywhere, but you can see it has, you know, not an unreasonable chart against those open line colonials, so you got some chance, right? I don't know. The danger? Well, we're getting awfully close to Washington's troops coming in, and heat delays and stuff like that, that's just going to give Wayne's troops a chance to recover and reform. We've only had the one. It's been a long time since we've seen one. They're not that likely, but still. Giving a chance for those fresh troops. They don't get to move during that, but to come up too. I mean, the numerical situation looks really ugly. These aren't, I mean, Wayne's got the best troops, basically. These are not good units for the most part, but just the sheer numbers means that the Continentals are going to be able to outflank over here, and that clear stops being as good a thing. Oh, let's see, scenario 20, I don't remember which one that is. That just ended. I don't know which one that is. That's the Monmouth courthouse scenario, which is the initial advance. The hedgerow scenario was supposed to start that's 14. Yeah, that's supposed to start just now. And that starts with the Colonials, getting their reinforcements, but set up in kind of the full fallback down here near the hedgerow. And I've seen them get pushed back even further than that. My clearest memory of the game is the one time that I played it opposed against another serious wargamer. And he didn't punch as hard with the Brits as I am now. And that's sort of where most of my memories come from. I do remember things being back here and having the feeling like, how do you stop the Brits at certain times? So I don't think this is an anomalous game for me. It's not the one that I recall the best, which was one where the Brits were much, much more cautious and managed to catch me being far too aggressive with the Colonials. You don't really need to be. You just need to trade some casualties. I had a good casualty point advantage, but it looked like I was going to lose one of my best brigades, which didn't make me happy. Another fatigue turn, which, of course, resuscitated some of Wayne's troops. It also means we jumped forward, and we've got Sterling beginning to come on with some forces. Washington's going to go over and try to help Lee here. I never end up with the columns or wings where they're supposed to be. This is supposed to be the advanced guard. Fine, it moved up first. Well, I'm putting the left wing, and it almost always seems to go in this direction every time I play, just because this is where I need more force. It's usually the main focus. Over here we've got, a bottleneck, and basically you throw something in the way here, you throw something in the way here. It's usually enough because of so much woods here. And this is where I feel like the battle is going to break, and the line to the Monmouth courthouse or to here is actually going to happen. Now, of course, if this line does break, there's a lot of clear road going out to the Molly's Well area, which is where the British Special Victory Point space is. Historically, there was definitely fighting going on down there. It doesn't seem to happen. I mean, we had the rush forward, the pushback. The pushback wasn't as intense as it was historically. Yes, no, I have seen the fight come that way, but from here, breaking through up in the north, it's just so hard because you get the guys here. By the time they get up there, they're blocked usually. Side of the turn, they pushed again forward, got pushed back a little bit. Over here, I tried to actually plow into there. I did a charge into the woods. And not good odds, but I feel like I need to break this. If they're starting to throw reinforcements down here, we're not gonna get the advantage of our reinforcements hitting there necessarily. Yeah, it's clear terrain and it'll be easier to fight in, but we really feel like we need to plow through and gain more victory points for having maybe all of the crossroads, maybe at least 3 of the 4, rather than we're getting parity on victory points from that, and then casualties, obviously, with the British casualties being a higher point value, it's pretty hard for us to catch up, even though we've got better units and are less likely to actually suffer casualties, it isn't really turning out that big. It isn't turning out to be a 2-to-1 odds which of losses, which is what it has to be in terms of infantry at least. All right, end of the 320 turn. We got more reinforcements coming. They're just streaming in. Brits trying to throw some over here, get a temporary numerical advantage, see if they can push the Continentals out of the woods there. That would mean a big thing, really, especially if these guys fell back too, but they may not. You know, I might swing up across the creek here. So it's probably too late to force that. Here, I don't want to try to push it too hard. I'm not making attacks here. I'm not making melee or close range attacks on the artillery even, in part because I'm disordered there. Didn't go into here, although I could have, but I chose to fire at these, see if I could take one more shot at disorganizing them, because if I can silence those guns, that would make a big difference to the overall situation. Instead, though, I'm trying to slip some units by here because there are no reinforcements over here, and see if I can degrade that line enough that I can push forward and see what comes of it. Right now, the points don't look good for the Brits. 35 to 44